You ever drive past a storefront that used to be bustling and now it's just empty?
Mm.
Makes you wonder, right? What went wrong? Today, we're doing a deep dive into that very question. How do businesses fail, and what can we learn by playing business detective, a sort of business plan forensics?
Exactly. Think of it as an autopsy for a business.
Yeah.
We're not assigning blame, but we are trying to understand the chain of events, the underlying conditions that led to its demise.
Right.
And for you, even if you're not deep in the business world, understanding these patterns can be surprisingly insightful.
That's the core of an exercise many business students undertake. Taking a failed business, trying to reconstruct its initial game plan, the likely business plan, and then figuring out where the strategy faltered and how a revised approach might have steered it to success. It's like rewriting history, but with business lessons in mind.
And the real power here is in the reverse engineering. We're looking at the outcome, the failure, and working backward to identify the critical weaknesses, maybe in the initial assumptions or the market analysis or the execution.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic way to learn without the high stakes of personal failure.
So how do we even begin to reconstruct this likely business plan? We start by asking some fundamental questions. What problem were they trying to solve? Who were their target customers? What did their revenue model probably look like?
Okay.
And then we put on our critical lenses and ask, were those assumptions valid? Were those markets actually there?
And to make sure our analysis isn't just like a shot in the dark, we use established business frameworks. Think of them as different lenses through which we can examine the business.
Right, tools.
Exactly. You might have heard of SWOT. It helps us look at a company's internal strengths and weaknesses against external opportunities and threats.
Okay.
So when a business fails, thinking about their initial SWOT can quickly reveal if they maybe fundamentally misunderstood their strengths against market threats.
Right, and that's just the start. We can also use Porter's 5 forces to analyze the competitive landscape. Were there too many strong rivals? Were new competitors likely to jump in?
Did suppliers or customers have too much power? Porter's 5 forces helps us understand the competitive pressures the business was facing. Were they in, say, a hyper-competitive market with low barriers to entry?
Then there's the business model canvas. That gives us a structured way to look at how the business created, delivered, and captured value, right?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe their cost structure was unsustainable, or their customer segments weren't clearly defined. Identifying weaknesses in any of those areas can be key to understanding the failure.
Absolutely. And to get a sense of the broader environment they were operating in, we can use PESTLE, political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors.
The macro view.
Yeah. A sudden change in regulation impacting a specific industry, for example, could be a PESTLE factor that contributed to failure.
We can even look at the value chain to see if they missed opportunities to add value or cut costs at different stages of their operations. Or consider strategic tools like the Ansoff matrix.
To see if their growth strategy was too risky or maybe too conservative.
Precisely. And the BCG matrix can help analyze their different product lines or business units to see if they had a healthy portfolio. Was it all just question marks or dogs?
And thinking about finding uncontested market space, that's where the blue ocean strategy comes in. Did they try to compete head-on in a crowded market instead of carving out their own niche?
Good point. Don't forget the lean startup methodology either. Did they fall in love with their initial idea and fail to pivot based on early customer feedback? That's a key tenet of lean startup.
Yeah, the adaptability piece.
Exactly. It highlights potential failures in execution and adaptability. We can even consider Kotler's 5 product levels to understand if they truly grasped the different layers of customer needs they were trying to satisfy.
And finally, the balanced scorecard reminds us to look beyond just financial metrics to assess overall performance, doesn't it?
It does. It forces a broader perspective.
It sounds like a pretty comprehensive toolkit, and the idea is to use these frameworks to be thorough in our analysis. And to bring in a really interesting real-world perspective, we're also going to consider some insights from Frank Slootman, the CEO of Snowflake.
Oh, interesting.
He's got a fascinating take on embracing challenges and learning from tough times.
What's fascinating about Slootman's view is how he emphasizes that difficulty isn't something to avoid, but a crucial part of growth and learning. His experience building multiple successful tech companies offers a really valuable real-world lens through which to view business successes and failures. Slootman's point kind of boils down to this. Even the best ship sinks in a bad sea. Industry choice is foundational.
That's a great analogy. And the level of detail in this analysis can really depend on the kind of failed business you're looking at. The source material actually talks about different ways to approach this.
Right.
Whether it's a deep dive into a local business, maybe even involving talking to the people who were involved, or looking at a more well-known, larger failure, getting closer to the ground, to the actual story, can give you so much richer information.
Because getting that firsthand perspective, understanding the nuances and the human element, can make all the difference between a high-level guess and a really insightful understanding of what happened. The more evidence you can gather, the more robust your business plan forensics becomes.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive is clear. We're stepping into the shoes of business detectives, looking at failed ventures not to point fingers, but to extract valuable lessons. We're going to reconstruct likely business plans, identify the critical weaknesses using a range of analytical tools, and even think about how a revised strategy might have led to a different outcome, all while keeping in mind some key insights from someone like Slootman, who's navigated the challenging waters successfully.
Sounds good.
So where do we start when we're trying to figure out why a business actually collapses?
Well, the source material gives us a helpful initial breakdown of common failure categories. It starts with the fundamental core market analysis. Did they truly understand their target customers? Did they accurately assess the size and potential of the market they were entering?
Right. Were they perhaps chasing a mirage?
Exactly. Or maybe the market just wasn't ready, wasn't big enough.
And then there's the product itself. Well, was it flawed in some way? Did it not actually solve a problem that customers had? Or maybe it was just inferior to the competition.
Yeah, sometimes even a brilliant marketing strategy can't save a fundamentally weak product. If people try it and it doesn't deliver, they won't come back.
But it goes beyond just the market and the product. The people factor is huge, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Did the leadership team have the right vision and experience? Were they able to attract and retain talented employees? Sometimes a lack of strong leadership or maybe a dysfunctional team can derail even the most promising venture.
And what about the opportunity itself? Was the timing wrong? Was there a genuine, sustainable need for what they were offering? Maybe they were ahead of their time.
Or maybe the window of opportunity simply closed. Markets change fast.
Then there's the context, those external forces that businesses often can't directly control. Things like unexpected economic downturns, shifts in consumer behavior, or disruptive technological changes.
Yeah, those broader trends can significantly impact a business's viability. Think about Blockbuster and Netflix, right? Classic context shift.
Definitely. And finally, risk. Did they accurately identify the potential risks to their business? Did they have contingency plans in place to mitigate those risks?
Sometimes it's an unforeseen event or a poorly managed risk that ultimately leads to failure. It's like a puzzle, really, and you have to consider all these different pieces to get a complete picture.
And a crucial piece of that puzzle is the original business plan itself. What essential elements were maybe missing, or where did it fall short?
Exactly. The source material reminds us that a business plan isn't just a document you write to get funding. It serves several critical purposes. Was it clear in articulating the company's objectives?
Okay.
Did it effectively communicate the strategy to all stakeholders? Did it act as a practical roadmap for execution? Did it help attract investors? And, crucially, was it a living document?
A living document. Meaning?
Meaning, was it used to track performance and adapt to changing circumstances? Or did they just write it, file it, and forget it? If the plan failed in any of these fundamental areas, that's a significant clue in our forensics.
So we need to dig into the specifics of that likely plan. When they presented the executive summary, did it grab your attention and clearly lay out the core value proposition?
Yeah, was it compelling?
And when they described the market opportunity, was it backed by solid research and data, or was it based on, flimsy assumptions? These initial sections are so critical for setting the stage and building confidence.
And what's fascinating here is how those frameworks we talked about earlier come right back into play. When you're evaluating the market opportunity, Porter's 5 forces can help you assess the attractiveness and competitive intensity of that market.
Right. Was it a red ocean with sharks everywhere, or a more inviting blue ocean?
Exactly. And when you're looking at the context, that's where Pestle really shines, helping you identify those macro-environmental headwinds or tailwinds that could have significantly impacted the business.
Were there any major regulatory changes on the horizon that they didn't account for, perhaps?
Could be. And the business model canvas is invaluable for dissecting their planned approach to creating, delivering, and capturing value. Were there fatal flaws in their revenue model? Were there key partnerships realistic and sustainable. Understanding these building blocks can reveal critical weaknesses.
So it's not just about saying, oh, they had bad marketing. It's about using these tools to understand why their marketing was ineffective. Did they misidentify their target audience?
Right. Did they choose the wrong channels? Did their messaging just not resonate? These frameworks help us move beyond those surface-level observations to identify the root causes.
And this brings us back to Frank Slootman's emphasis on choosing the right industry, an elevator that goes up, as he puts it. This directly relates to our analysis of the opportunity and context. Even a brilliantly executed business plan might fail if it's operating in a declining market with strong external pressures.
That's such a key point. If the underlying market wasn't there, or if it was shrinking rapidly, it creates a massive uphill battle no matter how good the team or the product is.
Yeah.
And Slootman's perspective on embracing struggle is also relevant here. When we analyze a failure, we might be tempted to look for that one single obvious mistake. But often, it's a series of challenges that weren't effectively navigated.
That makes sense. It's rarely just one thing.
Exactly. And the real learning comes when we then try to develop a revival business plan. This forces us to take those insights from our analysis and apply them constructively. It's not just about diagnosing the problem, it's about proposing a potential cure.
So in this revival plan, you'd essentially revisit all those core business plan sections, the executive summary, the market analysis, the operational plan, the financial projections. And for each one, you'd outline how the failed business could have approached things differently, directly addressing the weaknesses you uncovered in your forensics.
And a crucial element here, as the source material points out, is to explicitly state the lessons applied within each section of your revised plan. This demonstrates that your proposed changes aren't arbitrary,
Gotcha.
They're directly informed by your analysis of what went wrong. It shows your thinking.
Okay, so for example, if your initial analysis pointed to a fundamental misunderstanding of the target customer, your revised market analysis and the revival plan would need to clearly articulate a more accurate customer profile, maybe supported by new market research or a different segmentation strategy.
Absolutely. And you'd also need to outline specific strategies to mitigate the primary category of failure you identified. If it was a people problem, like we discussed, your revival plan might focus on attracting experienced leaders or investing in employee training and development. You can spell that out.
It's about demonstrating that you've not only identified the illness, but also prescribed a specific treatment plan based on sound business logic and the hard-earned lessons from the failure itself.
And the final really important step in this whole analytical process is reflection. It's about stepping back and considering the broader implications.
What did you learn?
Yeah, what did you learn about the process of business planning itself?
Yeah.
How did those theoretical frameworks we discussed, SWOT, Porters, etc., how do they actually play out in this real world, albeit unsuccessful example?
And what personal insights did you gain that you can apply to your own future endeavors, or even just to better understanding the business world around you?
Exactly.
That active reflection seems key to truly solidifying the learning. It's not just about understanding one specific failure in isolation,
Right.
but about extracting transferable knowledge that can be applied across different industries and business models.
And it's in this reflection that Frank Slootman's wisdom can be particularly powerful. You might reflect on how his emphasis on industry selection highlights a critical flaw in the failed business's initial market assessment.
Or how his perspective on the importance of perseverance in the face of challenges could have played a role in the business's ultimate outcome. Did they give up too soon, or maybe fight the wrong battle for too long?
Those are exactly the kinds of reflective questions this process encourages.
So let's bring it all together. When we talk about business plan forensics, we're essentially taking a failed business and trying to understand its downfall by reconstructing its likely plans and strategies.
Right, playing detective.
We're using a variety of business analysis tools, those frameworks, to pinpoint the core reasons for failure, whether it was the team, the market opportunity, the external environment, or poorly managed risks.
We're then scrutinizing which elements of their business plan were inadequate or completely absent. And crucially, we're not just stopping at the diagnosis.
No, we're proposing a fix.
Exactly. We're going a step further to create a revised business plan that directly addresses those shortcomings, explicitly incorporating the lessons we've learned from the failure.
And the entire exercise underscores the vital importance of learning from mistakes, which, as our source material emphasizes, is an indispensable skill in the often unpredictable world of business. It's about sharpening our critical thinking and problem-solving abilities, making us more adept at navigating the complexities of future business ventures.
And let's not forget Frank Slootman's reminder that challenges and even failures are often stepping stones on the path to success. The key is to extract those lessons learned and to make wise strategic decisions.
Especially when it comes to choosing the right industry to operate in. That elevator going up.
Precisely.
So, as you're going about your day, maybe you'll look at those empty storefronts a little differently. Consider a business failure you know about. What do you now think were the crucial factors that led to its demise?
Yeah, try applying some of these ideas.
And how might the frameworks we've explored today, things like SWOT, Porter's 5 Forces, the business model canvas, help you dissect what went wrong and perhaps even imagine a different path for that business? What kind of elevator was that business on? Was it going up, down, or sideways?
Ultimately, delving into why businesses fail isn't about dwelling on the negative. It's about gaining incredibly valuable insights into the ingredients for success. By carefully examining past stumbles, we can better prepare ourselves and others to build stronger, more resilient, and more effective businesses in the future.
Transforming those failures into powerful, actionable lessons.
That's the goal. All right, welcome back, everyone, to this deep dive. You know, we've been going pretty deep with Project #1.
We have a lot to unpack there for sure for you business planning students at UDEM.
Absolutely, and especially, for this project, for Professor Guajardo's class, Reviving a Failed Business Through Business Planning.
Yeah, he picked a good one. This one really makes you think.
It does. It makes you think. It makes you put yourself in the shoes of someone who's maybe gone through something that's really, really difficult.
Yeah, and it makes you analyze. That's what we've been talking about. Being analytical, thinking strategically, almost like business detectives.
Yeah, like business plan forensics.
Exactly. Taking a business that didn't make it and figuring out not just what happened, but how the original plan might have had some gaps.
And then the fun part, at least for me, is like,
Yeah.
okay, now what? What would you do to actually revive it, bring it back to life?
I know, that's where the creativity comes in, right? And we're going to be focusing on option 1 today for this project.
Yeah, let's break that down and help everyone understand exactly what's expected and how to approach it successfully.
And hopefully have some fun along the way.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the core of this option 1, really centers on this idea of learning from failure, which is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs are afraid of.
Right.
But it's so powerful.
It really is. Businesses fail for lots of different reasons, but often it's not like this huge catastrophe. It's like a bunch of small things that go wrong over time that weren't addressed.
Right. And if you don't go back and look and really understand the why behind it, then you can't learn from it.
Exactly. Like, what was the thinking that led to those decisions? What assumptions did they make that turned out to be maybe not so accurate?
Right.
And that's where the value is, because then, when you go to plan your own business, you can think, okay, how could I have done it differently? How could I build a plan that's more resilient?
So, I mean, this is really, really important, not just academically, but down the line in your careers as entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Being able to analyze failure is such a useful skill, whether it's your own failure or someone else's, taking that failure, dissecting it, and extracting insights that you can apply to your own endeavors.
So let's get down to the steps. What do people actually need to do for option 1?
All right, so step 1 is to identify a failed business that you can really, really dive into and research.
And you want to pick a business that's interesting to you, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But Professor Guajardo, he's structured the grading in a way that I think is pretty interesting.
He has. There's some nice incentives in there to maybe nudge you in a specific direction.
Right, so there's big points, potentially 100 points if you choose a local failed business.
Oh, cool.
And you can secure a video interview with the founder.
Yeah, imagine that. Like, you're sitting down with the person who went through this whole experience.
I know, right?
You can ask them about their plan, their challenges.
What they would do differently.
Exactly. That's gold. That kind of insight from a primary source.
Absolutely. Now, I know not everyone is going to be able to get a hold of a founder, especially a local one, so you've got some options.
Yeah, you do.
If you can get a local business but not the video interview, there's still a max of 70 points.
Yep. And if you choose a well-known business, and you're probably not going to get an interview with, the founder of a huge national chain.
Right.
But you can still get up to 85 points. So, it's a strategic decision there.
It is. It is. So, okay, you've got your business. The detective work starts.
Investigate and analyze.
It is. It is. And you put together this forensic report.
Exactly. And when you're gathering your info, the more sources, the better. Don't just rely on one article. Dig in, find news reports, financial data if you can. Maybe reach out to former employees, customers even.
Yeah, really get a feel for what happened.
Yeah, different perspectives.
And the forensic report itself is concise, one page.
Yeah, one page.
Really identifying those core reasons behind the failure.
Exactly. So think about it. The market analysis, financial projections, operations, the management team. What were the weak points?
Right. Was it, did they misread customer demand? Were they underfunded from the start? Did they not adapt to changes, competitive landscape?
Yeah, pinpoint those failure points.
That's the forensic report.
That's the key. Then the fun begins.
I know, the revival plan, right?
The revival business plan, yeah. This is where you take everything you've learned and you build a roadmap for a comeback story. If you could go back in time.
This is a little more detailed, right?
It's a little meatier, yeah.
4 to 6 pages.
4 to 6, full business plan. So executive summary, market analysis, financial analysis, operations, the whole 9 yards.
But the key here, and I think this is really, really important, is you got to tie it back to the forensics report.
Absolutely. You got to directly address those weaknesses. It can't just be like any generic business plan.
Right. You got to show that you've analyzed those issues and you're proposing solutions in this new plan.
Exactly. So let's say, the forensic report said lack of online presence. That was a big problem.
Yep.
So in your revival plan, you better have a solid digital marketing strategy.
Right.
Or undercapitalization, that comes up a lot. Your financial plan better be airtight. It's got to be credible.
It's got to address those things specifically. Now, one thing that you have to include is a strategic lesson from Frank Slootman.
Right. You have to take at least one thing you learned from that interview. And Professor Guajardo, he's pretty serious about that.
Yeah, he is. He is. It's not just name dropping,
No, not at all. You got to really think about it.
Yeah.
Did he talk about focusing on a niche market?
Rapid scaling, company culture.
All of those things, yeah. You got to find something that's relevant to your case and explain how it contributed to the failure or how you could use it in your revival.
And you can weave it into your analysis,
Yeah.
your revival plan, or your reflection. We haven't even talked about the reflection yet.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Yeah, the one-page reflection. What did you learn? Big picture. What are the big lessons? What surprised you?
Right. Like, did you have any assumptions going in about business that this whole project kind of flipped on their head?
Absolutely. And then you've got your presentation, 10 minutes to bring this all together.
10 minutes, about 14 slides, and you really got to highlight those key failures and solutions.
And think about it. It's like a story, right? This business that went down, and you're bringing it back.
It is. It is.
And how does that apply to other businesses?
Right. Make it visual.
Make it compelling. Charts, graphs.
Before and afters. Those are always fun.
Yes. And finally, supporting documents, evidence. This business existed.
Exactly. You need proof. Website archives, news articles, anything that shows this was a real business.
If you interviewed the founder, you got to have that recording or a transcript, or at least detailed notes.
And Professor Guajardo wants that YouTube link if you got it.
He does. He does. And of course, your references, anything you used in your plan, get permission if it's proprietary.
Got to cover all your bases.
Absolutely. Now, just to remind everyone that grading, it really does make you think about how you approach this.
It does. It does.
Local business, video interview. Big reward.
100 points.
Huge.
It's a good chunk.
But local business without the video, 70 points.
Right, right.
Well known, no interview, 85.
So you got to weigh, the points, the time you have.
Do you get the interview? All of that.
Exactly. What are your resources?
Yeah.
Where do you want to put your effort?
Yeah. And just to give you a sense of kind of the workload, Professor Guajardo, he estimates this will take about 4 to 5 hours per person on the team.
That's not nothing. It's research, analysis, the writing, the presentation.
Supporting documents.
Don't procrastinate.
No, do not procrastinate. This is pretty involved. So option 1, reviving a failed business. You're really getting in there and understanding the why.
And then coming up with a solution and potentially, you find that local business, you connect with the founder.
Oh, that's powerful.
It's amazing. Like, you really get to understand their journey.
So if you like problem solving, you like figuring out what went wrong, you like this kind of forensic analysis, and you like to be creative,
This is the option for you.
I think this is the one.
It's like being a business pathologist.
I like it.
Doing an autopsy on this failed business, and then you're the one writing the comeback story.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, just some general tips for success. Start early. We can't stress that enough.
Yeah, no.
Don't wait. You need that time for research, for analysis, for the writing.
Exactly. Get ahead of it.
And don't just describe, analyze. Use those business frameworks, SWOT analysis.
Yeah, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Porter's 5 forces. Professor Guajardo, he specifically mentioned that.
Yeah, he likes to see those frameworks. It shows that you're not just, going through the motions. You're really thinking strategically.
And it's a good way to impress him. Now, visuals are huge.
Huge.
You want to make that presentation memorable. Use charts, graphs, before and afters.
Absolutely.
Make it pop.
It makes it so much easier to understand and remember.
And finally, that reflection. 1 page, but don't underestimate it.
No.
That's where you really show your critical thinking skills.
You're connecting the dots, taking these specific lessons from this case study and thinking about how they apply to business in general.
Absolutely. Well, I hope this breakdown of option 1 has been helpful. This is a chance for you to take what might seem like a negative, a failure, and turn it into a learning experience.
That's business alchemy, right?
I like that. Turning lead into gold.
Turning that failure into a success story, at least on paper.
Right. But, in the process, you're developing these skills that are going to be so valuable as entrepreneurs.
Exactly. You're learning how to analyze, to think strategically, to solve problems.
Absolutely. So start early, think critically, use your resources, and you know what? You're going to learn a ton from this.
You really will.
Now, just so you know, in our next deep dive, we're going to be getting into Project #2.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole different beast.
That is a whole different animal. But we're going to break it down for you, so don't worry.
We'll make it easy. We'll make it fun.
We will. All right, everyone. Until next time, happy analyzing.
Happy reviving.
All right. So we're back and ready to really dig into something that I know is going to be super helpful for everyone in Professor Guajardo's business planning class at UDEM. Right?
You got it.
We're talking about project option #2.
Yeah.
The one where you actually get to talk to an entrepreneur and then break down their business plan.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. You also have to compare it to a business that, well, didn't quite make it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for all of you, being at this point in the semester, this is where the rubber really meets the road. You've got all this knowledge from the textbooks and the lectures, but now it's time to see how it all plays out in the real world, with real businesses and real entrepreneurs.
Totally. So what we want to do in this deep dive is basically walk you through project option #2 step by step, sort of like a roadmap. We'll highlight some key things to consider, some maybe unexpected insights you might gain, and hopefully you'll walk away feeling super prepared to just crush this project, ready to jump in.
Absolutely. Let's tackle the first big piece, which is probably the most exciting part for a lot of you, and that's the entrepreneurial interview. This is where you get to sit down with someone who's actually been in the trenches running a business for at least 2 years. Real experience, not just theory.
So yeah, 2 years is the minimum here. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, think about it. 2 years is enough time to have faced some real challenges, made tough decisions, maybe even pivoted their strategy. They've seen firsthand what works and what doesn't. And that kind of experience is pure gold.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Professor Guajardo has set a time frame of 45 to 60 minutes for the interview, which seems about right for a deep dive. But how can students make the most of that time? I mean, what kind of questions should they be asking to really get to the heart of things?
Yeah, that's crucial. And this is where lessons 1 through 4 really come into play. Think about the core concepts. Defining the business, telling the organization's story, spotting opportunities. Now imagine you're asking these entrepreneurs to reflect on those same principles, but through the lens of their own lived experience.
Like instead of just saying, what's your mission statement? Let me ask, how did your initial vision evolve as you faced real-world challenges? Something like that.
Exactly. You want to dig deeper, Ask about the assumptions they made in their initial business plan and how reality tested those assumptions. Those kinds of questions can reveal so much more. And of course, you'll need to record the whole interview, either audio or video, but obviously with their permission.
Right. And upload it to YouTube so Professor Guajardo can easily access it. and of course for your own reference later.
Yeah.
So moving on for the interview, we get to the comparative analysis. This is where you take that success story you just interviewed and put it side by side with a business that unfortunately didn't make it.
Right. So after the interview, you'll want to research the entrepreneur's business in depth. Use secondary sources, industry publications, news articles, their website, customer reviews, all of it. Get a really solid understanding of their whole story.
And then find that comparable business, the one that failed, which might take a bit of digging. But the point isn't to criticize their mistakes. It's about figuring out where their paths diverged.
Yeah. What decisions did they make, or what circumstances did they face that led to such different outcomes? I mean, maybe both businesses were targeting the same market at the same time, but one just couldn't hack it. It's fascinating, really.
Okay, so now let's talk deliverables. The big one is the business plan analysis or development, 4 to 6 pages. Now, there are 2 ways this can go, depending on the entrepreneur you interviewed.
Right. If they already have a formal business plan, you'll analyze it, identifying the strengths and also any weaknesses. Maybe they overlooked something crucial, or maybe there are areas they could strengthen in hindsight.
But if they don't have a written plan, then your interview basically becomes the source material for you to create one for them, with all the standard sections: executive summary, industry background, market analysis, and so on.
And then the next piece is the comparative failure analysis, 1 to 1.5 pages. This is where you really dissect the differences between the successful and failed businesses side by side.
And get this, Professor Guajardo specifically wants you to use these 4 lenses: people, opportunity, context, and risk. So how did the leaders in each business compare? Did they approach the same opportunity differently? What external factors were at play? And how did they handle risk?
And then, based on your analysis, you'll develop a page of strategic recommendations for your entrepreneur, but not just general advice. Each recommendation should be actionable and tied to a specific part of their business plan.
Right. Show them you've really thought it through. And then comes the part where you reflect on everything you've learned. The reflection on learning. What were the biggest takeaways? How did those business frameworks from class help you understand things? How might all of this impact your own thinking about business in the future?
This is where you can really show your critical thinking. It's not just summarizing what you did. It's about processing what it all means to you.
And last but not least, the presentation. 10 minutes, around 14 slides, covering everything from the interview highlights to the comparative analysis and the key transferable lessons you learned.
You'll also need specific slides on the business plan components, a before and after if you're recommending changes, a success versus failure slide, and a final slide wrapping it all up. Oh, and don't forget the documentation. You need to provide proof of your interview, whether that's the recording itself, a transcript, or detailed notes.
And of course, the YouTube link to the full interview, and any references you used, and any business plan documents you have permission to include.
So I think it's clear why this project option is so valuable. I mean, you're getting this up-close and personal look at what it takes to run a business, both the successes and the failures,
And you're not just reading about it in a textbook. You're hearing it straight from the source, and then applying those frameworks you've been learning to analyze real-world examples.
Now, a few tips for success. First, start early. I cannot stress this enough. Finding an entrepreneur, scheduling the interview, doing the research, it all takes time.
Absolutely. And use those frameworks, SWOT, Porter's 5 Forces, but don't just name drop them. Really show how they helped you analyze those businesses. For your presentation, think visual. Use charts, graphs, anything to make your points clear and engaging.
And for your reflection, really dig deep. What did you learn? How has your perspective changed? This is where you make those connections for yourselves.
And remember, Professor Guajardo's there to help. If you're stuck on anything, reach out to them.
Yeah.
They want you to succeed.
Final reminders. The deadline is May 19th, 2025. Mark it down, and if you have any questions about anything, the entrepreneurs, the interview, the research, don't hesitate to ask Professor Guajardo.
So just to recap, Project Option #2 is all about that in-depth interview, comparing a successful business to one that didn't make it, analyzing or creating a business plan, and reflecting on what you learned.
Think about this as you start working on it. How can those stories of success and failure teach you things that you wouldn't get from a textbook alone? Lessons that can shape not just your plans for this project, but your whole understanding of what it means to be an entrepreneur.
This is an amazing opportunity to learn from the real world, from people who've been there and done that. So dive in, explore, and most importantly, make the most of this incredible learning experience. You got this.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.